Good morning, World Church. This is the daily short thought for Friday, and we've been asked to each pick a passage to talk about, a verse that's been on our hearts recently. I'm not sure that the passage I've chosen will actually be everyone's cup of tea. I do tend to gravitate towards some of the more sad, dark bits of the Bible. And so I have recently been reading the book of Lamentations. If you're not familiar with the book of Lamentations, the name should give you a clue. The Greek versions of the book's literally called Lamentations, the Book of Tears. It's a collection of 5 sad poems. They're acrostic, but it means they start with each verse with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So it's literally an A to Z of suffering and grief. It was written by the survivors in Jerusalem in around 586 BC, right after Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians attacked Jerusalem. They laid siege to the city and it lasted well over a year that they couldn't come or go from the city. So as you can imagine, there was major starvation and people went to quite extremes to survive. And then after that, they finally broke down the walls, attacked, tore down all the buildings, the palace, the temple of God, and to rub salt in the wounds, they then forcibly took hundreds of the survivors away with them when they left back to Babylon, something we know as the exile. And these poems were written by the people who stayed in that ruined city of Jerusalem. As you can imagine, it's not a happy book. It has lines like, "How lonely sits the city that was once full of people, how like a widow she has become. See, O Lord, how distressed I am. My stomach churns, my heart is wrung within me." It's dark. So I guess you're asking, why did I choose to read this? I find that reading about other people's difficulties and struggles in the Bible helps to remind me that any difficulties and struggles I have a place in God's story. I like to read other people's emotions because it comforts me that I too can be sad, grieved, lost and distressed. In church sometimes we can sing so many songs about happiness and hear so many positive testimonies, but when you don't feel happy, you feel out of place. And the words in the Lamentations give me permission to feel sad and give me words to express those things to God in my prayers. But what I really wanted to show you in Lamentations is hidden right in the middle of it, in chapter 3, verse 22. It says this: "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." I mean, you probably recognise those words, right? I've seen them quoted places on pretty pictures you can buy that have that quote on it, and I recognise some of those lines from songs we've sung. But I never would have guessed they came from the middle of Lamentations. I was surprised to find them there. And I'm really struck that it comes mere breaths after saying, "My soul is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is. My soul continually thinks of it and is bowed down within me." And then immediately switches to talking about God's faithfulness and love and goes on to encourage people to have hope in the Lord. And I think this reminds me that it is possible to be bowed down with your emotions and with terrible circumstances, and yet still praise God for being steadfast and loving and unceasingly loving. And the poet who wrote this didn't need God to be fixing his life in order to say those things. He didn't need to have physical blessings and a smooth time in order to offer up praise. He could say, his mercies are new every morning and great is his faithfulness, when his world had been literally torn down around him. He doesn't get angry at God, he even finds space to count his blessings. And he doesn't lose faith. He doesn't lose hope. What an example of how to praise God. How to face our troubles, bear our losses, and to live with them without being lost in them. We don't need to downplay and ignore the tragedies we face in this life in order to pretend to be happy for church or for God. We can express to God our real grief, and yet we can also at the same time have a very real peace and trust in the unceasing love of our God. Let's pray. Father, grant that in every trial we face, your Spirit within us would be bringing us that same peace that surpasses understanding, that we too may praise your name as the God who is unendingly, eternally faithful to us. Amen.